Thank you so much, guys, for coming. Today, we're talking about a very special session, the importance of data science, right? I think before we start, it'd be great that all of you can do a quick introduction. Anastasia, why don't you start?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Anastasia, and I'm a product lead at Adjoe. And through all my career, I think I've been working on developing ad tech products and MarTech products from scratch. Now at Adjoe, I'm working on a new product called Wave, which is a new ad mediation. And I've been always working on some products that are really heavy on data science, so I'm really happy to share my experience.
Hi everyone, my name is Bozo Jankovic. I work as head of Ad Monetization at GameBiz Consulting. We're a consultancy firm for the video games industry. We help game developers with all sorts of business challenges, including ad monetization, UA, business development, and so on. And previously I was working at Nordeus as a business development manager. You might know Nordeus from the days of their very popular top 11 football management game. It was highly popular in Turkey, as Volkan knows. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Volkan. I'm the co-founder of Gamester Kids. We're developing edutainment apps for the kids, mostly for the preschoolers. I've been in the game industry like more than 15 years. I've been in the project like starting from Flash, from Facebook times to the VR and even like in the mobile phase. So we had like extensive experience in the game development scene. So yeah.
Cool. My name is Sid. My full name is a little difficult to pronounce. I'll keep it short. I'm the co-founder of AppBroda. We're a data science platform and a GAM provider. We work with a lot of clients out of Turkey, and I'm really happy to be here. And I'm meeting these guys, and I had a chance to talk to them. These are really interesting folks, and I hope we have a great panel today. Cool. Why don't we start with a simple question? We've all experienced the highs and lows of COVID, right? You guys have seen, it was a really bad time for the rest of the world, but for gaming, I think the downloads went high, engagement went great, and now things have normalized. Margins have become thinner. So I wanted to get a perspective from all of you, from a gaming company and from third-party service providers. How has your strategy changed in monetization pre-COVID, COVID, and now? Maybe we can start with you.
Right. Well, the COVID times was bad for the humanity. It was like the best times for us because millions of kids stuck at home.
Okay.
So with the parents didn't know like what to do in house. So our apps was like a good solution for them, and we had like the highest engagement and monetization during the COVID times. But in terms of strategy, our focus is like on subscriptions. We're still like subscription-based app. We don't have like ads yet because on our space, parents doesn't want to put the ads in the game because this creates like an not safe environment for the kids. Our strategy didn't change, but on a tactical level, things are changed for us. For example, we have like more segmented offers. Drip campaign strategies, like to increase the purchase, new paywalls, new pricing strategies. We did change mostly on the tactical level, not strategically, but we need to keep up with the same rates. The engagement is still high, but we need to like work more on the monetization to balance this like post-COVID syndrome.
Okay.
Yeah, for us, I think that, so during COVID, of course, we've seen increase in downloads, revenue, and then also in ad engagement. People were playing games more, which meant that throughout that play time, they were also served more ads than they would usually, just because of the total time. So I think that strategy in that direction didn't change, but a lot of it was managing expectations of our clients, publishers, who were seeing decreases in performance, lower impressions per daily active users, lower engagements, and so the decline was coming just because the play time in total was declining overall. So that was one part of it. The second thing is I think that with decrease in impressions per DAU, which leads in ARPDAU decrease as well, I think that developers were more open to testing maybe some new strategies like trying out different ad formats, which are maybe not conventional, so outside of rewarded video ads, interstitials, banners, offer wall, so something new on that front, or segmenting users more so that they can actually achieve those impressions per DAO, which were on a higher level, by segmenting users and saying, okay, users from this country or users from this user segment that played the game for this much might be eligible to get more interstitial ads or to increase the caps for rewarded videos. So try to maybe segment the users in a way that we've adapted our strategy for that specific user need, for that specific user segment.
Okay.
I think to sum up, the point about metrics drop that Bozo has is basically what it means for a publisher is a revenue drop. So I think it's fair to say that most of us don't have enough time and enough resources to go with the intuition anymore. So we just have to calculate everything through, thought everything through. So that's a good point of actually introducing data science into your stack.
Makes sense. So I realize there's a little bit of difference in how you guys approach. One is completely subscription-based. The other, I'm assuming, is a little bit ad-heavy. I looked at some of the clients, and some of them are really big clients in terms of ad revenue, right? So since we're talking about data science particularly, how does data science work for you in terms of deciding how does the subscription design be? What should the pricing be?
Sure. Like at the heart of like most of the gaming business and ours, there's a data science because we're collecting a lot of data. So and this dictates like the pricing ratios, pricing rates, the paywall designs, and everything is dictated by this the data and also data science. So it's not very different in my perspective, like non-ad or like ad. So you need to have this like data science infrastructure behind the curtains. So depending on the data you collect, you need to decide more wisely. The objectives, I think, are different. Like for non-ad games, like we still have the data science to optimize the user experience and also increase the monetization, but the focus is more on the subscriptions or like in-app purchases. Whether like for non-apps or non-ad businesses, the strategy changes like to not increase the revenue while not disturbing the user experience. But like most of our decisions is driven by the data because like, we have enormous data like collecting. So this dictates our decisions mostly. Like which paywalls, which pricing, which countries. It all is a mix of like the data collection.
So Bozo, I have a follow-up question on that. Like. You're a consulting firm, right? There's always a data privacy issue with a lot of clients that you work. It's difficult to get all the data from there and understand how to do it. Probably for Adjoe it's easier. You're an SDK-based platform. You consume a lot of data. It's easier. But for you, it's kind of tough to get all the data and make sense of it, clean it up, and then make sense. So do you have any advice on how you go about it?
So definitely since COVID times, things have dramatically changed with Apple depreciating IDFA practically, and then more and more privacy regulation coming in. Now, for example, with what Google is doing with TCF regulation. So I think that for publishers, both user acquisition and ad monetization and monetization in general are becoming more challenging because they have less data points about the users. Right now on iOS, the developers don't even know where the users are coming from in certain cases. So they're going actually back in time where they're actually asking users through the game, oh, where did you hear about our game? Which is probably something that you would do 10 years ago, but now you don't really have other means. So that's one thing that for example, developers are doing to figure out some information about the users. Previously, for example, we had in ad monetization, we were doing this tactic where depending on the campaign from which the user is coming, so depending on the UA source and the type of campaign, we would actually create a different user experience. So if the user is coming from a campaign that was CPI based, so super cheap installs, we know they're not going to convert, we would start bombarding them with ads. And if the user is coming from a campaign that was focused on some event or purchase, then we would keep ads to a minimum, trying to put additional pressure for the purchase. So I think that, you know, in that way, some of those tools are gone. But I think that overall, there are still strategies that we can use to kind of leverage the data that we have, first party or through the mediation, or through these like second-hand kind of data sources.
Makes sense. And from a product standpoint, what is so unique about Adjoe that in terms of data collection that you're able to add value for a monetization standpoint?
Yeah, sure. I think here at Adjoe, of course, we work closely together with publishers, and mostly the ones who are ad monetized or like hybrid monetized. One of our first publishers was actually Sunday, which is a huge hyper-casual publisher, and also our sister company inside the Play Group. And we learned many things together, and I think there are two key components when it comes to data science application to ad monetized games. First point would be that, of course, building a system that can actually analyze your margin in real time and adapt to it really quickly. So we can actually predict what is going to happen tomorrow. And this is what, I mean, Sunday and usually their studios and other publishers doing in-house. Another point would be that I think we have to be really careful, and we have to be curious, make sure that we have maximum control and visibility of how your monetization partners are working. Sure. I mean, ad monetization and ad sources. I think being a publisher in a publisher's shoes, it's really tricky, and it's kind of also scary that you depend fully on your partners. So I think the least we can do is actually ask the right questions and understand how they're working. I mean, what is the business model? What is the revenue sharing? What is the algorithm that they use? How is the auction performed? So I think this is something that publishers should understand, at least to have maximal visibility and control.
I second that.
Yeah. So I have a follow-up question on that. So very, very interesting point. I think one of the key things that most developers struggle with is the key KPIs that they should look at. So data is very vast, right? There's a vast amount of data that you can flow in. You've got a very valid point. You've got first party, third party. Now you're trying to consume more information because sources are now lesser. You get creative with data. Now, for a developer, sometimes it's too much information, right? You've got to really simplify it. What do you think is a good metric to look at when you look at data monetization and the core KPIs of the business?
I can start. And from a publisher perspective, I think, first of all, it's a really complicated question. And I think you can't look at only one metric. There should be a North Star, of course, which
obviously
can be LTV, can be ARPDAU, or for something like that, depending on your category. But then it comes to some other metrics that are actually on another level, like, I don't know, RP, IPM on your UA side, for monetization, like CPMs, all of this stuff.
Sure.
So there are different layers.
Yeah, I would say that I agree with Nastya about the complexity and not being able to focus on one metric. If I would have to choose one for ad monetization, it would be ad average revenue per daily active user. Okay. And I think that sometimes developers are wrongly focusing on eCPM, correct, which is the metric that doesn't tell you much, because once you start comparing and you say, oh, I have an eCPM of $20 in US and he has 30, and all of a sudden I'm freaking out. How can he have a 50% higher eCPM than I do? But we don't know anything about each other's games, so we need to figure out how many ads per user he's showing and I'm showing, because that's a big factor because of the eCPM decay. Then on the other hand, we don't know the user sources for these games. So I might be doing some super cheap campaigns, and on the other hand, some high quality users. So we've seen over and over that very, very similar games, even from the same publisher, same genre, same country, same platform, there can be big differences in eCPM, and sometimes it's very hard to explain to the publisher why is that. And so I think that eCPM, although it's a good metric to keep an eye on and something that should be tracked as a trend, so if you see some decreases and changes in trend, that can tell you something. As a number itself, it doesn't tell you much, so I'd rather focus on ARPDAU. And of course, the golden formula of LTV being higher than CPI is something that's true for any game out there, I guess.
Makes sense. Is that true for you as well, Volkan? Like, is LTV the golden metric that you're looking at?
Yeah, obviously, like every game business has the main KPI is like having the LTV is greater than the acquisition cost. So it's true for all the games. On our side, we don't have like the ads, but for the monetization, what we look at before monetization is retention. It's the core thing. You need to have like a decent retention to build a good monetization system. In subscription space, like the monetization is kind of a bit different. What we look at is like the paywall conversions, again LTV. MRR is our like main metric, especially on the subscription side, like monthly recurring revenue. This is our main KPI, like kind of North Star metric, but obviously there are like lots of things to track. But the basis is I like the retention. On top of it, you build your monetization systems. So yeah, the LTV is like the highest thing that you should be all focusing out at the end.
Makes sense. I have an interesting question, and it's a mixed panel, so I'd like to ask. As you understand, monetization is a complex activity, right? And we have 2 third-party providers, actually 3 third-party providers, and a developer. So I'm trying to understand, and let me ask you this first. What is your view on third-party helping you with monetization and the importance of them getting involved or doing it in-house?
Well, it depends also on the company. There's not like a true winner here. Like it depends on the objectives of the company. It depends on your metrics, or it depends on your like targets. So, for example, we have like a small team. Like we're like 18 people right now. We don't have like a specific data team inside, but we're working with like third-party firms as well. So what we have is the like data is collected by us. The questions and targets are set by us. But we don't hire like the constant data scientists within our team. So we work with like external teams in order for the analysis and to help us. So again, it's like a strategy depending on the company. But I'm very on that side of favor of like helping like third-party helps. So it's also like good to keep the company smaller and also get some external help. And also, you can change the companies like depending on their compatibilities and also like depending on their like skill sets.
Okay.
So you can work with like different companies on the monetization, retention, and also other like data questions. So it makes sense from the developer point, but it's again like depending on the company.
Okay. So Bozo, you're a big company, you work with really top games, I've been going through your website. Maybe you can give us a point of view on what they see value when they work with you. I hope it doesn't become a marketing pitch.
I'll try to keep it non-marketing. So I would say that different developers have different needs. If you're a small studio that, you don't know what you're doing about ads, you don't have any ads, or you have very basic setup, then the benefit of working with somebody else out there, an expert in that field, is that they can actually help you understand and implement what you need and to use the best potential of your game, to reach the potential that you might have. If you're a big company and you might need some extra help, you already have a team, but you need extra help with a specific game, maybe some games that are new or the games that are kind of legacy, but they're still making a lot of money. Sometimes it can be very simple, like you've been working on a game for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, and you just need a fresh pair of eyes. I think it happens to everyone, like when you're looking at something too closely for too long, you lose the bigger picture. And I think that maybe now, like specifically for us, what might be value for some of our clients is that in general, we're working with different studios that are focusing on purchases or ads, and then we have different perspectives. We've used pretty much all of the mediations and networks out there, so we can come in with some wider perspective. And like if you're working on a match-free game, the chances are you're focusing on your closest match-free competitors. But we can bring in that wider picture and say, okay, but what about this game? Maybe you could implement this strategy, this placement, and try to mix things up a little bit and increase your performance. So I think that the bird's eye overview of the industry.
Makes sense. And I think I'd like to add a point here to both your points. I think one very big value add that I see working with a lot of clients is the strategy that you essentially implement is sometimes very repeatable, but it always changes with the time. There is a lot of seasonality that comes in play. So sometimes what's working for you probably might work for somebody else as well, but the exposure is very limited sometimes. The transference of information is very limited. So I think that probably helps a lot.
Absolutely.
Cool. I think I'll try and address a question I think a lot of people have probably here as well, is Google. You realize, and I'm sorry, I'll take the question on ad monetization for a second. Google is moving away from bidding, right? That's a very big move. For a lot of game developers, you have actually capitalized on that, including us. We've capitalized on our business for a very long time on that. What is your view now? Like, how does monetization differ now when the entire ecosystem is moving away from waterfall to bidding? How do you think that will impact monetization? And what is the next step on data science that you feel would be what developers should focus on?
Yeah, so from my perspective, so yeah, I completely agree. That was a big move for the industry. Everyone was waiting for Google to make a move towards bidding because there were some other networks that weren't doing that. So I think that coming 1st November, when officially that's going to start, we're going to see maybe less time spent on the waterfalls, although I think that on average we still have, even with Google going way towards bidding across the waterfalls that we're managing, I think that still around 35 to 40% of revenue will still be coming from non-bidding networks. And the reason why we're keeping non-bidding networks in the mix is because we've seen over and over that hybrid setup and is performing better in terms of eCPM and ARPDAU than the strictly bidding one. In terms of the strategy, I think that strategy goes towards more granularity. So first, you'll be able to spend more time optimizing the remaining parts of the waterfall in more countries and more country groups. You can do it more granularly. And also, you can start doing pretty much using some data points, data science in the back end, not manually. You can actually create waterfalls, like hundreds of waterfalls for users based on different criteria, based on some data that you can use in the background. Plus, you can dedicate more time towards optimizing the user experience and the user flow in the context of ads, not necessarily in terms of waterfall, but in terms of the capping, the rewards, placements that they have, even the formats that you're using to monetize them. So more granularity and you know, approach that's giving different ad experiences for different user groups.
Makes sense. I'd like to pull you here, Anastasia. I went to the website. I realized Adjoe as a platform focuses a lot on bidding, right?
Yeah,
that's the main focus. So how is your point of view on this now?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, when we talk about differences between waterfall and bidding, I think waterfall has at least 3 disadvantages that are key. First is basically a lost opportunity because you're sending the request only to a specific amount of partners and a specific order. That means that not all the networks are getting the requests, and you're actually losing an opportunity because some of them could have bid higher, but you will never get it. So this is the first point. The second would be that actually you're spending a lot of time on managing the waterfall. That's, I think, a valid point. Another point that is actually also important for user experience is high latency, because you're also not sending the request simultaneously to everybody, because you have to wait for each network. It causes a lot of latency for the app, and it can destroy your UX. So at Adjoe, we are actually building a bidding-only mediation, so there is no waterfall at all. And Bozo mentioned that you see good results for a hybrid model. Yeah. But actually, according to our tests, when we are running A/B tests with different mediations and comparing with bidding-only, we see better results for bidding-only. Okay. Of course, it depends on which mediation it is and how it is built, what kind of networks are there, what kind of category it is there. But we see a huge benefit in it. We also think that it's important for all the partners and all the players in ad economy, I would say, because you basically are in a fair position and everyone gets an access to each impression. And that makes the market more transparent and more fair.
Makes sense, makes sense. I think another question, I think there's a lot of panels discussions about it, was hybrid monetization, right? And again, I'm sorry, man. It's just a question that everybody seems to be talking about. I thought I'll address a few. So I want to get your point of view. You guys are really into the ecosystem right now, working with some of the top developers. How do you see hybrid monetization growing? How do you see data science playing a big part in it? What is the first step a developer should take, either to move from only subscription to probably a hybrid, or just ads to hybrid?
So I think that in general, like even from the conversations I had with hyper casual developers here at the conference, I think that a lot of those studios are trying to move to hybrid. The reason why is because ads are becoming less efficient in monetizing users because of the troubles we've mentioned about IDFA. So I think that studios working on hyper-casual games have more urgency to move to hybrid than games that are using only purchases, for example, and they want to introduce ads. For them, it's so much more chill. It's like, okay, let's just add a cherry on top and let's maybe grab 5, 10, 20%. For those that are in hyper casual, they're trying to pretty much reinvent their economy, and I think that is so much harder than to do. It takes an extra set of skills, and I think that you need to change your mindset. You need to think about cannibalization of the purchases and how in general the purchases work. So definitely redefining also the data flow and how you think, because in hyper casual you're relying on data from third parties. All of the data is pretty much coming, revenue and everything, eCPMs, everything is coming from the networks. Here you are in power, so you need to kind of embrace that and change the entire infrastructure of your data.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think when it comes to the point of using data science for hybrid monetization, it's basically combining two different systems together, because you have to, you have a system for analyzing how your in-purchases work and what's the margin out of it, and also you have this ad monetization, then you have to combine it somehow. And I think for the publisher who are trying to introduce one and another and add it to your setup, it's the main struggle, actually.
Makes sense.
Well, also I can add something.
Please.
Like hybrid monetization, I think is like from new concepts, but like games were always like the casual games were like getting ad revenues and in-app purchase revenues. The hyper casual was just focused on ads. Now they're introducing like the in-app purchases, but again we're like at the beginning, so the games were already like getting revenues from the in-app purchases. Back then it was like, I think it like 60 to 40, like 60 in-app purchases, 40 ads. Right now, like
correct,
like 40 in-app purchases, 60 ads now called like hyper casual. I think it's like kind of like a mix of the concepts, but again, you need to you don't need to leave the money on the table. You need to be like focusing on monetization to monetize most of the users. Some of them with in-app purchases, but some of them with the ads. But this was always like this, like in the game industry.
Makes sense. It's come a full circle, probably.
Yeah, it's again we're coming back to the same place.
Makes sense. I think we're always done with the time. I'll ask one final question for probably everybody here. So I'd like to ask each one of you, if somebody is now building a game today, what should they start with? How should they look at their stack when they're looking at data to begin with? Volkan, maybe sure. You can help us.
Like first things first, you need to have like your goals set. So what you want to measure, what's the important things, and what you need to collect. Then you need to select like a good event-based analytics platform. For example, we use like Amplitude. So there are also other alternatives like Mixpanel or whatever. But first things first, you need to have like a decent event-based analytics collection, and you need to set the right points and the right points to the right events to track. So you need to gather like most of the data. Then it goes to like analysis and actions and insights. But the first tool is like a decent analytics system, and Firebase is like too intermediary to like starting point. It doesn't count, so you need to have it, but you need like a deeper, more detailed analytics system.
Makes sense.
I wouldn't have much to add to that. Maybe just like, I think it's super important to start early. So from day zero, start thinking about the data, start thinking about what your goal for the game is, start thinking about your game as a business. Not, of course, everyone should be enjoying playing your games and you should be enjoying making them, but at the end of the day, in order for that to last for a long, long time, you need to think about the game as a business, and with that, you'll need the data from day zero.
Makes sense. I hope you don't add Adjoe to the mix.
Yeah, I've seen so many companies onboarding data science, and I think many of them are making the same mistake. And if I would like to give only one advice, that would be not thinking about the data science as a silver bullet. Okay. I mean, it's not a solution; it's a tool. So first of all, like with everything in business and like with everything in life in general, you have to set the goals, like Volkan said, that's right. You have to set the goals, you have to think about what kind of problems are you solving, and maybe start with something simple and then add layers and may add more complexity. And maybe one small point would be that if you're thinking about hiring a data science team for yourself, think about other expenses that are coming with it as well, like infrastructure costs and other things.
Makes
like,
sense.
I don't know.
That's a very good point. I think data science also takes up a lot of infrastructure cost,
Yes.
Which is very, very difficult to quantify at the start. But I think that's why probably you need third-party providers to reduce the cost. Cool. Thank you so much, guys. I think we're up for the time. I hope you guys enjoy the panel. Thank you again.
Thank you.